Welcome everybody. Welcome to another session as we've moved into the fourth month of Israel at war, and good to have you on board with our special guests this afternoon. So we're really privileged. Tan, would you like to say some opening welcome words?
So welcome everyone for, if I'm not mistaken, the 8th or the 9th session since the beginning of the war on the 7th of October 23. I'd like to welcome my good friend and long alliance, I would say, former ambassador of Israel to Australia and Director General of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yuval Rotem. Nice to see you, Yuval. On behalf of all, thank you so much for joining us. I know how much it is difficult to reach you, to chase you during this difficult time, and I'm sure that you are part of the forces to help Israel in this moment of distress and difficulty. I also would like to welcome champion and leader Margaret Court. She's now moving to a position. I'm coming from a tennis family, so I know to appreciate your participation in this very special occasion that we do every week. I even saw you playing in Wimbledon in the 70s, late 60s. So I'm Eitan, I'm the chairman of the, call it in Hebrew, you call it Amuta, an organization that takes care of the voice of Israelis, especially outside the United States, the Israeli diaspora, trying to say that the Israeli diaspora is a catalyst for Jewish peoplehood and trying to combine our life outside Israel with Jewish life and also with supporting of Israel communities like the Kingdom Builders. And we've built special relations since maybe a decade now with John Lockwood and his community and you all, and we visited Israel for many, many times already, maybe 5 times already, studying the connection between Christianity, Jewishness, and combining, supporting Israel. And thanks, John, for having us here as partners.
It's a pleasure.
And okay. I think that you have to get the microphone and tell about Yuval and your special relations with him. Thank you.
Well, welcome Barry and Margaret Court too. It's lovely to have you with us. And we're joined today by our friend Yuval from Israel. And we met in a very funny way, Yuval and I. It was actually at the opening of Beersheba Park. Back in, was it 2007, I think, or might have been, or 2008. And we didn't actually meet on the day, but we met a month or so after, when I sent him a photo of me standing on one side of the big bronze horse, which was unveiled at the opening of Beersheba Park, and he sent me back a photo of him standing on the other side. So we realized that we were there together. So welcome, Yuval, if you would unmute. It's lovely to have you with us. Thank you for getting up early in the morning on a Sunday. Just wonderful to have you with us, and maybe you can just share a bit and then we'll have a bit of Q&A with you, if that's okay.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Eitan. Special welcome to Margaret and Barry. It's always a pleasure to see you, even not in person, but at least through the screen. There are so many things that we can say about what took place over here in the last 5 months. But I just want to say that maybe a few takes away from that. And then I guess that the other guys on the screen will have likely have a lot of questions, because this is one of this very difficult issue and moment that everyone has his own touch on certain dimension of this ongoing conflict. So I will say the following. Unrelated to what the day is today, which is March 10th, Israelis are still living the October 7th. I think this is the most important element to acknowledge that psychologically and mentally, we are still there. And even though the world moved forward with other issues, with the dates, with the change of season, we are still there. Because for us, we woke up in this morning on Saturday, on October 7th, to the darkest day of Israeli history. This is like a defining moment nationally and personally to each and every one of us that will remember this moment until he's going to close his eyes. Second, it's a turning point. And the question about the turning point is first of all, for us Israelis, to have a good conversation, what it means to us. John, the story is not about only October 7th. This is not September 11th. Because there was also October 8th in Sydney, in Berlin, in New York, in London, when people celebrated and glorified the massacre of Israelis in a way and brutality that we have never seen since World War II. And after October 8th came October 9th and 10th and 11th, when there was not necessarily reaction or comments to these strong anti-Jewish and anti-Israeli sentiments that spread all over the world. They still have pockets, and we still have friends that we can reach out. But overall, the sense of loneliness, the sense of siege, it is something that my generation didn't experience. It was basically stories of my grandfather and my great-grandfathers from all those places. And I thought always that this is basically echoes, stories and images of the past. And suddenly, I live it. I live it with my grandchildren, with my children. It says a lot about us. And we need to be back to this sense of resilience and sense of commitment to this country and to its values. Because had we had this kind of conversation 6 months ago, I would most likely talk with you about different things. About normalization with Saudi Arabia, about new Middle East that is going to unfold, and Israel is going to play a central role. And now I need to talk with you about this hour of difficulty, and I need to talk with you about this gloomy outlook for this entire region. So from having such a rosy future to address a gloomy outlook, it's tough. Because you need to keep hope alive. You need to see promise. You need to provide future. And above all, you need to share a vision. And it's difficult. Every day it's a difficult experience for us. And when you see the comments, the demonstrations, the hatred, wow, tough. Tough for all of us to understand what we're up to. Madam, my first boss was Shimon Peres. When I was in the mid-80s, I was a new cadet in the foreign ministry, and he used to have a line, which I'm going to quote is, the Jews don't have the luxury to be pessimist. And I think there is something about that. You always have to be forward-leaning and to hope for a better future. But once we have decided, or we basically have been knit when we had, once we have acknowledged that we cannot live side by side next to them, I mean next to Hamas, there are not really too many options left for us, because we have tried to do it for 15 years. So if we cannot apply this to the South, how we are not going to apply it to the North? And at this moment, Israel is attacked, not every day, but throughout these 5 months, from about 3 to 4 fronts. From Lebanon, from Syria, from Yemen, and from Gaza. And it takes a special spirit of a people to understand how to cope with these kinds of hostility, and not so much hope that these guys are going one day acknowledging that the Jewish state is going to stay here forever. So I think it's important to fully understand that what is basically at stake here. We need to win this war. There's no other options. The only way for us to avoid the next war is by winning this war. Because if we are going to keep some elements of Hamas intact, it means that we are not winning the war. And if we are not winning the war, they are winning the war. Very simple. And they have promised, and they have committed themselves to regroup and to pursue one more October 7th with respect to Israel. So I think that the mission is very clear, but we need to be very careful. What about the day after? And what is the meaning of the day after? How we are going to build a new structure, a new architecture for the Middle East that is going to give promise not just for us Israelis, but also for those forces in the Arab world that would like to normalize and to work with us hand in hand into the future. Because all of us have at least one enemy in common, and that's Iran. So I think that this crisis should not be wasted. This crisis needs to be the launching pad for some degree of promise and some new alignment of forces. All those voices of moderation that we can reason with, that accept the notion that Israel is the central element of this region, and together to find some bridges into the future.
Agreed.
And I think that this is the right way to look at that. But again, John, we are living and we are still on October 7th.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when this war is going to be over, John, when we are going to be declared triumph, it's not going to matter at all, because we are going to remember only the first day of this war and the way Israelis were killed and massacred and butchered and burned alive, like the stories of the 40s in a different continents. And it's going to leave an impact. And all what we need is people like you and Barry and Margaret is to help us to heal from this hour of difficulties. That we still have friends out there that we need to reach out.
Yeah.
And this is my place to express my grateful for many years of support, but especially in this hour of difficulty.
Yeah.
So, John, I will stop here.
Okay.
And I'll let everyone else do.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful. Thank you, Yuval. And as you may or may not know, I mean, you know, here in Australia, we've had the demonstrations and, you know, the attacks from the pro-Palestinian stuff, but the Christians are rising up now, and through the help of people like Barry and Margaret, and the Never Again is Now rally that was held in Sydney, where there was some 10 to 12,000 people, Jews and Christians, standing for Israel. And
yeah, I was there. I was there in this demonstration, John.
Oh, you were there?
I was there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was there in this demonstration.
Wow.
In Sydney.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, that was great. You got to let me know. And then there was one in Adelaide, and they're planning one in Melbourne and in Perth. So I'm just going to pass to Barry and Margaret to say hello now and say a few words because you've been a good friend to them as they have been to you. I think you're the first and only Israeli ambassador that spoke at the Bible College in Victory Life Centre. So that you hold a special place in their hearts. So welcome, Barry and Margaret, and please say hello to Yuval and pass some comments on.
Good to see you, Yuval, and we're always praying for Israel. And this next week we have a summit on to come against anti-Semitism in this nation. So we're having that next week. In April there'll be a rally here for Never Again. So that's happening. But I just encourage you, I always feel with Israel, there's more with you than against you. And if we go back into the Bible, which I've been teaching this morning, you know, when Israel always turned back to God, and things happen in nations, and we know you're persecuted, but you are the green button of the world, and Christians and people need to realize what happens in Israel happens in the world. And, you know, I look at Hamas as a type of Haman. When Esther prayed and fasted for 3 days and went to Mordecai, and Mordecai told her about what was about, Haman was about to wipe out the nation of Israel. And Hamas, that's what they'd love. They'd love to wipe it out. But that you're only the start. If after that it'd be elsewhere. But that's why prayer and fasting is so important. And that's what we're doing in this next week, because it's so important to stand with the Jewish people in this time. And, you know, through prayer and fasting, prayer changes the course of nations. No other way. We may have the military also, but when God is with you, I tell you, and we reach out to him, he moves situation. You look right through the Bible. He spoke, when Israel turned back to God, he spoke confusion into the enemy's camp. And they knew that God was on their side. And so his Bible is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And you sense there's a lot of people with you. I know when you're going through things, it feels like nobody's with us, but we are. And you've got some really wonderful prayer warriors and people around the world standing with you in this time. And we were praying for you in our service this morning, and the Lord often just brings tears for Israel. So you know there's going to be a change. Something atmospheric is going to change in this time. So you be encouraged. And we look at it, we're in the midst of it, it looks hopeless. But when we have faith in our God, he moves mountains. So I just encourage you in that, what is happening. And you just know, God's on your side. And I just did say also, I feel the young Jewish people in other nations need to be a voice. And I think in this time, you've got different people that are starting to stand, because a lot of young people around the world has never understood it. And they've never understood, it's never really been explained too much about the Holocaust. And the younger generation of the Jewish people who are in other nations need to stand up for righteousness and truth and justice. And I really believe when they start to honor the nation of Israel, they're going to see a shift.
So, Yuval, how are you going? Going well. The Eagles aren't winning the footy yet. We just started the season. But we've got an election coming up in Australia, and we're pre-selection at the moment. And being a past president of the Liberal Party, I get to vote on that pre-selection. And we're certainly looking at candidates that support the Jewish people on that one. The other one is the commercial side of it. As you know, I was president of the farmers, and we had trouble getting ships through the Red Sea just recently. They had to turn back and come back to Australia. The concern there is that there were live sheep on that boat, and they got turned back to Fremantle because they were going to run out. No other country would take those sheep, because once they left Australia, they were Jewish sheep. They weren't owned by Australia any longer. And normally they'd unload them into another country. They wouldn't take them, so they had to bring them back to Australia. And now, only a week ago, they've gone back to Israel via Cape Town, which is very dodgy for cattle and that. But so what worries me is trading after the war. You know, those countries that wouldn't take the sheep, we've got to convince them that they've got to support Israel.
Yeah, Barry. I mean, Yuval was instrumental in some of the Abrahamic Accord stuff after he left the ministry. I know he was involved with that, and you were getting really close, to a couple of countries there acknowledging trade and working with you, Yuval. But that's sort of hit the wall at the moment. What comments have you got about that?
Look, I will give you just one example, and I think that you can draw the conclusion for yourself. On the day of the war began, on October 7th, most airlines discontinued the service to Israel. There were only 4 airlines that continued the services to Israel. 2 of them were Arabs, Al Ittihad and Emirates. So everyone else, the American, the European, everyone else stopped traveling to Israel. But who remained? 50% of the services beyond the Israeli airlines were Arabs. I don't think you need a better indication than that to understand that the real foundation is very much there. The strong foundation between Arabs and Israelis are still very much there, to the extent that beside the ambassador of Jordan, no other ambassador were recalled from Tel Aviv. Others did it, but not the rest of the Arab world. So I think that overall, after 150 days, the Abraham Accords countries so far were able to remain loyal and committed to the agreements, and see still that they have interest and benefits to stay in touch with Israel. The moment, John, the moment there will be no Hamas, it is likely that we are not going to see Qatar also active. Remember, Qatar is a Muslim Brotherhood entity. The other place that you have a Muslim Brotherhood entity in power is in Turkey. In every other place around the region, Muslim Brotherhood's people are in jail. So Hamas, as associated with the Muslim Brotherhood entity, are not welcomed by many of those countries. So I think that philosophically and politically, but also geostrategically, they found Israel to be a relevant player. If we're going to win this war, they are going to enjoy one less radical voice in their own community.
Yeah.
So I think that overall, we fight the war not just for ourselves, but also for other people and for other countries, because we are almost the first line of defense. When I say first line of defense, I mean that we in the world, we in the West, have realized or basically pursue way too often a policy of inaction. That was also our problem until October 6th. When you see I'll give you an example. The participation of Iran in the war between Russia and Ukraine. Very different story. Russia and Ukraine is already on its third year of war. Europe and America defined this war as the most important event in Europe since World War II. Suddenly, Iran stepped in this war. What does it mean for a medium-sized power like Iran to defy the interest of America and the Western European countries? And yet, nothing happened. Big time. So Iran can continue to support Russia. And it means that Russia reciprocating this in supporting Iran its own proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, and all the other gangs that living in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
But the point is that we in the West have learned to use a new expression. You know, in the 30s, John, they used to call it appeasement. But now we have a new expression. We call it de-escalation. The next time you hear the expression de-escalation, you should know it's a recipe for doing nothing. This is what you see. And this is the world. Because we all need to understand what is basically at stake. You have forces of change live in Russia, in China, in Iran, in North Korea. They want to see a change in the world order. And we are part of those guys, part of this club of nations that we would like to pursue a certain agenda with values, with objectives, with social justice, with the compliance of law. So there are many elements here that involve suddenly in this war. But remember the beginning. The beginning is the Russia-Ukraine war. And I would say the idea of the gravitation around Russia of all those forces as of February 2022. And this is the outcome that we see, that we experience. Yeah. Because if you follow what took place the day after October 7th, you have seen a new position of China and a new position of Russia, which I think we have never seen before. Why? Because these two countries have an interest. And the interest is to see more hotspots in this world, because this is basically destruction from whatever is going to be the agenda, either at present or in the next few months.
Yeah, I agree. My godfather, who was a Christian, used to study a lot the Bible, and especially about the prophetic times, etc. And he always used to finish by telling us, beware the bear, beware the bear. And the observation over the last few years is, as you said, Russia is supporting Iran and vice versa. And yes, it's something we don't have an answer to, but we can certainly pray about it.
And it's the same thing when Barry mentioned the story of the Houthis in Yemen, and the blockage of this waterway. John, who is basically supplying the ammunition, the ballistic missile to them? Why we have difficulty to spell out the word IRAN, Iran? Because one, you say that, you may need to draw some conclusion. You may need to pursue action. And that's what other countries are trying to avoid.
Yeah, agreed.
By the name of de-escalation.
Yeah. Certainly I observed that. Oh, by the way, just before I pass to Barry or Margaret again, I just see that one of our friends, Dr. Temujin, who's an advisor to the Ethiopian government, has joined us, and we're going to Ethiopia in November, Yuval, to do some sharing and teaching and whatever with their government heads and business heads. So I'll be calling on you to reintroduce me to the ambassador over there who we helped last time. We went to Burundi via Ethiopia, and we were part of the eventual solution to the Burundian problem of the solar panels. You remember, Barry?
Yeah, I remember that well, and we're due to go to Burundi in July, end of July, in early August this year. And Peter Tatara, the doctor from Burundi, was at church this morning. So he's had big talks with Dr. Das, who's a very leading doctor in Australia, really, on cancer and that, ongoing with us. So that trip will be on. So our concern over here, Val, is looking after Australia a bit. We have a small defence force and very close to Indonesia and China. We're on all fronts on that side to make sure Australia's okay. In the meantime, helping you all we can. So we're a small defence force, spreading ourselves wherever we can, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess, Yuval, probably 14 months ago, I go back to the biblical and to prayer. The Lord showed me a big stop sign out over the ocean towards China, Russia, and Iran, and the nations around Israel. And I didn't fully understand it. I knew I just had to pray and speak confusion into them. And that's why, again, I say, when idolatry comes into the nations of the world, which as it is in the nations of the world today, we have to turn back to God, because he's still the God of the universe. He's still the creator. And when we turn back to him, I tell you, it becomes atmospheric. God does not want a third world war. He wants a great awakening in the nations, that he's still alive and living. He created the trees, the universe, and he's still very real, and he is the God of the Bible. And that's what in so many nations is coming against the biblical. And when they come against Israel, that is what they're coming against the Jewish people. So, it's always followed you. It's been there, but don't give up, because we put our trust and our hope in him and our faith in him. He moves mountains, and, he does it personally, but he does it for nations because he loves the nations. And I know he's given me a heart for the nations of the world, and we just see his hand move and not the enemy, because we do have an enemy, the devil, and he's behind Hamas, and he's behind the evil of the world. So we just got to trust him in this time and start to praise him and worship him and thank him. And I don't care what nation we're in, because we all need a move of God like never before.
And I think one of the things we observe for those who've been to Israel and those who know the history, you just look back at the 1973 wars and some of the other miraculous.
That's right.
Israel should never have won or claimed back territory, but it happened. So, yeah, we stand.
We believe the same for this one, Yuval.
Absolutely. That's good. I know Atan's got a question. I see Dr. Tem. Have you got a question you want to ask?
Basically, I'm just here. We had this event even last week, praying about all this. And remember, we have Jews here in Ethiopia.
Yes.
And we have been discussing of how we can at least claim and say, forward our questions, even for the UN entities here. And we have done that, but basically we didn't get an answer yet.
Okay.
And we keep praying on that, and then and together we'll definitely, God will help us to bring that sort of positive impact in the community.
Yeah, that's great. Yes, there is a little population there of Jewish people in Ethiopia. And what was the film that, can you remember, Atan, the film about the escape, how they got the paratroopers got the whole lot?
Yeah, the Red Sea Hotel, about the Moses Operation 1984, the rescue of the Ethiopian Jewish community on their way to Israel.
Yeah. And you can get that on Netflix if you want to have a look at it. It's a very good film to watch. You got a question, Atan?
Yeah, I wanted to add to Yuval's very important message about the macro, about what you call the three bears, and how the whole situation will evolve at the end. And I want to ask, first of all, I want to pay tribute to the women worldwide and to abductees that are still raped in Gaza every day, and to tell you that there is a major message here to remember the women that lost their lives on the 7th of October and later, those who were kidnapped, and those that we all pray to have them back ASAP on behalf of worldwide effort. And it's all said for the International Women's Day. And always remember that. I wanted to just give maybe or ask Yuval to tell us if phase one is now, and maybe we have to expect the unexpected phase two on the eve of Ramadan, and if there will be any chance for phase three from the northern front. Thanks, Yuval.
Eitan, I think that Israel needs to be a little bit more humble and more reserved after October 7th with their prediction. That's number one. So I have no illusion about what is going to unfold here. If we want to avoid the war in the north, we need to win the war in the south. I think this is the only way to make sure that there will be no war in the next few months in the north. If they see our resilience, if they're going to see our commitment, and if they're going to see our willing to sacrifice the best sons and daughters of our own people in order to win this war, they might have a second thought about their next move, if and when. So this is my own assessment. The other assessment, I think that there is no appetite at this moment for every player, for any player in the region, and also on the superpower, to deal with this issue of another war in the region. I mean, the erosion, the suffering, the complication on the international arena is already to the extent that it's going to be a bit more difficult to address one more mega conflict, because the next conflict, if comes, it has nothing to do with the Palestinians. It's between Israel and Iran through Hezbollah. That's a hell of a different story of a conflict. And given that the American election is already playing out there, none of these candidates, and no one in Europe, that dealing with Russia, and likely, there's election in Russia, I guess, next week, when we know already the outcome. But once the outcome is taking place in Russia, there is already some indication that Russia may make a move with respect to Ukraine. So, Eitan, the international sphere is already pretty complicated, and I think there will be no appetite to see one more crisis unfolding in the Middle East. So my own sense, reading this international picture at this moment, or international outlook at this moment, that the war is moving to a different stage of less intensive fight. Ramadan is coming in today for a month. And I think that you might see some more focus on Russia-Ukraine in the next few days and few weeks. And that's going to create maybe a different touch. But this can be changed tomorrow morning. Because one more unguarded response or provocation on their side may bring a very much different response on our side. So again, what I say to you now is for the sake of their record.
Yeah.
But tomorrow morning, it can be a very much different outlook for the entire region.
Yeah.
Because there are so many players in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen. They're all, by the way, proxies of Iran. So we should have to see how it's going to unfold. We have to, one thing we learned from this war is that we don't need to rely heavily on intentions. We are better rely heavily on capabilities of the other side, because we were wrong completely on intention on October 7th.
Yeah.
So we have to factor in capabilities. And I think this is when Barry makes some comments about the size of your armed forces in Australia. You better think about capabilities of the other side, not just about their intentions. You should learn from us a little bit about our mistake.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
That cost a lot of money. And that also need to bring a lot of decision-making process.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah,
Yes,
Thank you.
Barry?
Yes, Barry.
Yeah. Well, I just want to make the point that Australia has one big weapon, and that's a massive surplus of food. Our crops have been very good, and we don't consume much of our own, about 2 or 3%, and we export the rest of our food to different countries in the world. So we're very powerful in the fact that we mightn't have a lot of guns, but we have got food. And I'm just wondering how we distribute that. You know, it seems to be purchased now. The ships are going out of Fremantle as quick as we can get them, and we're getting a very good price for our wheat at the moment. So what is the future of the food situation in the world?
Food security and water security are going to be one of the two major issues on the agenda of this world in the upcoming years. So every country who has a surplus of either water or food or energy, they have a lot to offer. But it's also the seeds of the threats. Because some countries might have an appetite to take a bite from your own cake.
Sure.
So you will have to be very careful to use it wisely, and also gaining some prominence internationally. So it is not just about who has more F-16 and who has no submarine like you.
Sure.
It's also about, what do I have? What are my pot of strength? For example, if rockets and missiles are fired to Australia, how are you going to defend yourself? You need to look for some new partners and new allies and new friends that are going to support your line of defense in the upcoming years, because your size is an asset, but also a vulnerability.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
We agree with that.
A very good point. We've got to use our food to buy friendship from countries that will on our side and also have defense purpose. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, so that's great. And yes, we're aware of that, and we're trying to. I don't know if I brought you up to date, Yuval, but we've established through the Parliament House a Friends of Israel caucus that is going to be led by Andrew Wallace, the MP from the Sunshine Coast. And there's about 18 or 20 members of Parliament, Senate and Lower House that have joined in that group. And we will also be starting a foundation to support that, as well as Friends of Israel Foundation, Oceania. So bringing together all the Pacific Islands, etc., with Australia in the support of Israel. So there are moves afoot to align with other countries and align with Friends of Israel from all around the world through the Israel Allies caucuses, as you know, in Europe and many other places. So we're getting our act together. We've been a bit slow, I must say. That's it. That's been our problem. Never thought it was going to come to us or we'd be affected. And Australians are very much in that boat of, if it doesn't affect us, we don't worry about it too much, etc. So, but we're coming. The Bathsheba horses are rising again. Yeah. So if anybody's got a question, we've got to cut about another 8 minutes. If anybody would like to ask a question, just put your hand up in the reaction button, and we'd be happy to either to Barry or Margaret or to Yuval. If you've got a question, please put your hand up.
John, just to mention that the Australian riders passed on the way to Beersheba via Be'eri.
Yes, they did.
You know that?
Yes, absolutely. Wonderful. Jeff, you've got a question. Please unmute.
Yeah. Thanks, John, and everybody. There's a few questions, I suppose. I'll try and keep it fairly simple. First of all, Yuval, you mentioned the obvious thing of the US presidential elections, and I'm wondering what you would see becomes the outcome of 2025 in the event Donald Trump returns to the presidency. And of course, the flip side of that is if Donald Trump isn't returned to the presidency and there's a continuation of a Biden presidency, what do you see as the outcome of that?
They're two big questions.
It's a very simple question.
I wish.
Yes.
I don't think, I need to go to, just a second. I don't think there is anyone, I'm just working with this because the battery is getting, now you can see my home. I think that what it's very difficult to understand at this stage how second Trump administration is going to behave. I don't think there's anyone in the world. There's no MI6 or AZO or Mossad.
We just lost you a minute.
We're plugging your battery in.
We'll see if he comes back. We might have lost the battery. While we wait to see if Yuval can plug back in. Oh, here he is. You got your battery back. You working, Yuval?
Maybe.
I think he's frozen. You're back, Yuval?
Yes, yeah, I'm back. Yeah. Okay. So, do you hear me?
Yes, all good.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just say that it's difficult to know what's going to take place in January 2025, but we definitely need to understand leaning towards victory based on what you see in the polls. Those countries in the region and those countries internationally are going to ask the question that you asked me. And that's, should I wait for Trump to get elected or should I make my move now? And that means that 2024 might be a year of significant instability because of how countries are going to perceive their interest, either are going to enhance or undermine with the American election because of the unpredictability of Trump's second term.
Yeah. Geopolitically, that's pretty much exactly why I asked that question, is why I asked the question in the order that I asked it, with Trump first and Biden second. I think you're right. The propensity or the probability towards instability for 2024 is probably somewhere very high on the Richter scale.
You will be able to judge it, Jeff, by seeing how Russia is going to behave in the next few weeks.
Yep, that's a very good point.
Yeah,
wonderful.
And it won't just be a St. Patrick's Day party.
Thanks, Jeff. Greg's got a question. We've got a couple of minutes left.
Thanks very much. John, I want to thank you very much indeed for this wonderful conversation. I've known Yuval for many, many years, and he is a true champion who understands the politics, the world we're in today, which is an enormous shift that most people actually don't quite comprehend, because you have to understand not only these wars, but the whole shift where China, Russia, North Korea, Venezuela, Iran, this bloc now turning to the Americans and to the Europeans and the Canadians and the Australians, and they're saying it's our turn to lead. It's our turn to run the show.
Global South.
What's that?
They want to bring a block of countries.
No question.
Which they called
no question.
The Global South.
That's right.
And lead them into a change of the world order.
Correct. And I was recently in Taiwan and in the area of the Philippines and Indonesia, and these countries are all concerned. Just talking to our Aussie friends here about what they're trying to develop a strategy of a porcupine strategy, where they don't want any conflict with China or Russia or anybody. But at the end of the day, we in Australia too will need some sort of defence system where we are awake, and where if anybody wants to hurt Australia, they know they just can't walk in, from Toowoomba down. So we shouldn't think that this cannot happen to Australia. We should never think that this couldn't happen to Australia. We have to wake up, be absolutely engaged in foreign and international affairs, and learn and educate ourselves, because there'll be much more than prayer needed. And I say that, John, with the absolute respect of the team you have and the good work you're doing. We haven't yet been able to meet yet, John, but we will meet one day. But I just wanted to thank you again. And Yuval, I was in Israel just last week or the week before. I didn't. I was, so stretched, going to the south, going to Near Oz, going to the north. But, the spirit of the soldiers is good. The hostages situation is traumatic. So we have a lot of balls in the air at once, a lot of variables to deal with. But we're a strong country, a committed country. And the countries that you're talking about, Saudi Arabia, etc., they want to engage with us. There's no question about that. And I think that's just a matter of time, because they're on the same page in regard to Israel and Hamas. And Hamas has to be destroyed. No question about it. As unpleasant it is to watch the television here in Australia and to see the tragedy of the Palestinians, there's no question it's a tragedy, but there's nothing we can do about it. If they are used as human shields by Hamas, it's impossible. We are fighting a war with 1.5 hands behind our back.
Yeah, we agree, Greg. Thank you. It's good.
Thank you.
And
thank you, Greg.
Yeah, and
John, I need to go.
Yes, 6 o'clock.
It's already 9 o'clock over here, so
yes. We just want to say thank you very much.
To a close, I'll wait. Yeah.
No, we just want to say thank you very much, Yuval. Thank you to Barry and Margaret too, coming on as well.
Thank you.
First time. And thank you to all the other people that are all around the world, New Zealand, Ethiopia, where they've come from everywhere to here. So we're just very grateful that you're our friend, and we are friends with you. And on that note,
thank you so much.